Quilty friends. We are on the second to the last month of the Winter Wonderland Block of the Month Sew Along, and I can't believe it, we're finally going to make the snowman. This month we're in my home sewing room because of a variety of things, and so welcome. My son is filming, so if there is any problems, we'll just blame Jake, right Jake? Yeah, he's silent. We're going to start out by going through what's in your kit. I'm going to talk to you real quickly about general cutting for this month and then cutting up your white glitter fabric that you will use for the snowman. But we are going to do close-ups on all the fabrics because there is a lot of cutting and a lot of fabric this month. Okay, so the first thing you're going to have in your kit is a half a yard of white glitter. That's not on screen right now. But after that, you should pretty much cut and sew by section. So on page page 3 of your directions is where the cutting directions for the snowman base start. The snowman base uses this gray plaid, the black with the green trees on it. This is gray with tiny crosses. This is black with cardinals. These pieces are pre-cut. You don't have to do anything. You might have to trim these into triangles, diagonal to diagonal, but these guys are pre-cut for you and ready to go. Your green trees is one of the first cutting directions in your additional cutting directions from us. The green trees are used in this block, and I believe they're used again in the hat, making the hat. Okay, next up will be the snowman belly. The snowman belly uses this is gold with gold metallic on it. That's the scarf. And your background pieces are, this is green plaid with snowflakes, and this is black with tiny houses. So those are the pieces that get used in making the snowman belly. Plus you will obviously use some white glitter fabric that makes the snowman. The snowman face, your nose is the orange piece, the eyes and the middle of the scarf is this black with green and red tiny dots. You will also pull back in some of the gold with gold metallic on it. Your background pieces are black with snowflakes and gray houndstooth. Okay, that's going to be the snowman face. And then last but not least, you'll have making the snowman hat. This block doesn't use any white glitter. It uses some of the black with green trees. This is gray with silver metallic stars. This is the hat. It's gray, green with gold stars. And your hat band is the same fabric that you used for the scarf. Okay? Once you get all of those sewn together, the blocks sewn together individually, then you're going to sew the blocks together to make the big snowman section. You will have a large picture of the snowman section in your directions. One other thing I want to mention is in the past months, we've had a couple of people get messed up because they trim things or straighten things they weren't supposed to. Most of your strips, for example, the gray plaid, are cut the width they need to be for the widest piece you're going to cut from them. So you're going to cut a 5.5 inch square from the gray plaid. This is cut 5.5 inches wide. Jan straightened all the edges and cut all your strips exactly the width they need to be for the widest piece in that cutting section. So I believe you cut 3 pieces from this. I'm not sure, but I think it's 3. So what you're going to do is you're going to cut off, it starts with it starts with a 5.5 inch square. If you lay your ruler down and your selvage edge, you're going to try to work towards your selvage edge in this case. If you lay your ruler down, you probably want to straighten this edge, okay? The edge that we cut the strip off. So what you want to do is, and Jake, you want to zoom in on this if you can. I'll try to get it out of a place where there's a glare. You're going to lay your ruler so you've got one solid line on one edge of your fabric. And you want another solid line, or in this case a dashed line because it's 5.5 inches, on this edge of your fabric, okay? So you want to make sure you've got 5.5 inches all the way corner to corner, and then you're going to trim this edge. All right, then what you'll do after you've trimmed it is you're going to slide this over so that you've got 5.5, and see, this isn't perfectly straight, which is normal because of the way we cut it. It's not a mistake. So you straighten this edge, and then you're going to cut your 5.5 inch square. If you lay this on under your ruler and it isn't measuring 5.5 inches perfectly all the way around, straighten this edge and then cut, okay? So you'll have a perfect 5.5 inch square. You do not need to straighten the edges on most of these strips. If you do, and there's lots of ways to screw it up, but if you try to straighten an edge, you're not going to have 5.5 inches and you're not going to get what you need out of the strip. And the same goes for most of our strips. There is one that we cut you that's 6 inches, and you cut something that isn't, you never cut anything that's 6 inches wide. But apart from that, everything should be the width it needs to be, ready to go for you, okay? The only exception is your white glitter. You've got a 1/2 yard of this, which again is more than you need. But what you're gonna do is you're going to take your white glitter out. You're going to take it to your iron and you're going to press. And you're going to press out the middle fold. That middle fold that's in there, it's not your friend, okay? So press the middle fold out, and then you're going to bring your white glitter, and I'm going to try to do this way so it's the same way for all of us. You're going to bring your white glitter, you're going to match up your selvages. So my selvages are perfectly straight down here. And you're going to smooth it out. And now you're going to straighten an edge, and this is the only piece of fabric you're going to straighten the edge on this month. So we've got our solid black line lined up with the bottom edge of the selvage, and then we're going to trim off a little bit, and Jake, you can zoom in on this because they need to see this nice and up close. So straight edge or solid black line along the selvages. My selvages are lined up perfectly. And then we've got some, so we're going to trim off a little bit of both layers, okay? So you're going to take your rotary cutter and you're going to very carefully trim off an edge. And now that edge is straight. So now this and this form a 90-degree angle, okay? At this point, you're going to open it up. So you've got one long piece of fabric. And now we're actually going to cut this selvage edge off, which I know isn't something we normally do. So now what I'm going to do is this. This edge that I straightened, and you can see I sort of pressed a fold back in there, but this edge that I straightened, I've got a solid black line exactly along that edge. And if you can't get a solid black line to line up on that edge, it's not straight. And now I'm going to trim off my whole selvage here. And now I know that this and this are a 90-degree angle. So I know this is straight and I know this edge is straight. And if you have trouble remembering that, then grab a pin and mark it. This edge, you've got this edge that's straight and this edge that's straight. The risks of working from home. So you want to remember that those two edges are straight. Now you need to cut off a 16.5 inch piece. Okay, so how are we going to do that? We've got two options. Those of you who have invested in an 18-inch square ruler, now is the time to get it out. It's about to be your BFF. You can line this up so that you've got, if you're going to do it this way, you've got a straight edge, whoops, it's 18 inches wide, so You got to be careful. So you've got one edge lined up on the edge that I straightened, and then the 16.5-inch line on this edge that you straightened. It is this important. I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16.5, and make sure I have 16.5 inches. Okay? And then you just cut here, and then you're going to line it, and then once it's cut off, then you line it up the other way so you've got a perfect 16.5-inch square. If this inspires anyone, we have 18-inch square rulers in the shop. They're not cheap. You don't use them a ton, but when you do, you're so glad you have one. Okay, if you don't have an 18-inch square ruler, now you have to use the lines on your mat, okay? So if you don't have one of these, no big deal. You're gonna line, you guys are all gonna laugh at me. Pause it. Okay, so if you don't have an 18-inch square ruler, then it's not a big deal. What you're gonna do is measure on your mat, and because of the way my room is set up, I'm gonna do this a little bit differently than probably most of you would do. So I'm lining up here, we're gonna pretend the 30-inch line on this mat is the 0 line. And what I'm doing is this square corner that I made, I'm going to make sure that this line, this is on a solid line and this is on a solid line, and it is. And then I would measure over 16.5. So for here it would be to 46.5, and use my ruler and lay it down. And to get the 1/2 inch, what I'm doing is I'm lining up the 1/2 inch mark on my ruler with the solid line on my mat, okay? And then I would cut 16.5 inches. Whether you're using the large square or your mat, once you cut, you want to move your pins, okay? If you can't remember which is which, you want to move them over, okay? So that you know which are the edges that you've already straightened. So I cut off my 16.5 inches, and then I'm going to trim this down the same way to be a 16.5-inch square. The next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to have you cut from this cut end. So once this is cut, let's pretend this is cut, all right? You can see that now your piece is a funny shape. Normally we have you cut strips, right? The length of the fabric. But in this case, we aren't doing that because of the way you have to cut your fabric. The next thing you do is cut 10 inches. So from your cut end, you're going to cut 10 inches. Either with your large ruler, you can cut 10 inches, or with your mat and your regular size ruler, you cut 10 inches, and then you're going to subcut those into smaller pieces, okay? You cut this way several times during this process. You do the same thing. Instead of cutting long strips like normal, because we have smaller strips of fabric this time, we're going to cut a little bit different. All right? So that's the way you're going to cut your glitter fabric. And if I were you, the way I've set up the cutting directions this month is it starts out with telling you how to cut the white glitter fabric and the tree fabric. Okay? Stick those, label them in bags with labels, label them somehow. You're going to label them step 5, step 6 through 8, steps 8 through 13, and that kind of thing, okay? Just go ahead and label them. And then pull them back out when you get to that section. So the cutting directions start out by telling you cut the glitter, cut the trees, and then it moves into for the snowman belly, or the snowman base, excuse me, you will need the pieces of your white glitter fabric labeled step 5. You'll need the pieces of your tree fabric labeled step 5, and then you're going to cut these additional pieces. Make your snowman base. It was intended for you to cut those pieces, go ahead and make the snowman base, and then go away or continue on if you've got a whole Sunday or whatever set aside for this. But then you will move on to the snowman belly, and you will retrieve your pieces of white glitter that you need for the snowman belly, cut some additional pieces, sew that block together. This month, we are following the directions as they are written, except for when you're adding the corners of the snowman base, the corners of the snowman belly, and I believe there's some also on the snowman head, but maybe not. Those you're going to use your corner pop ruler. I know you guys all know how to use the corner pop ruler. In the cutting directions, it tells you exactly what lines to use for your trim down and square up on the corner pop ruler. So just follow those directions. If you need a refresher on how to use the corner pop ruler, we did use it in the month with the snowflakes. We're also going to use the stitch and flip method for a lot of other things. If you need a refresher on that, we did that both in snowflakes and in the mittens. I think we used corner pop in mittens too. So if you need a refresher, it's in mittens as well. The last thing I want to tell you is when you get to your nose, I was going to look for I got it all in a mess here. Oh, one other thing. I think you have an extra strip of the black with the tiny green and red dots. The cutting this month was especially complicated, and I think you wound up with an extra strip. No big deal, just hang on to it. You can use it for something else. But your nose, when you get to the nose, you are going to cut this on the diagonal. This and the piece of white glitter that you sew it to both get cut. Pay attention in your cutting directions to how to cut those, okay? The other thing is your eyes are very tiny. You use these tiny little 7/8 inch squares to make the eyes. You have to do that as written. There are no lines on the corner pop that will let you use the corner pop, so I'm sorry for that. Otherwise, we're around. If you have questions, we're happy to answer them. If you have problems, you know how to get us. But this month is really fun. It's some big pieces and it goes together faster than you think it's going to. And it's really fun when it's done. You'll have your whole center section because you'll have your snowflakes from last month and your snowman from this month. Don't forget to give your snowman a name and bring him in to meet us in the shop, and we'll put your name in the prize bucket and someone's gonna win free long arming. Good luck!